Version 2.5 of the AOPA Flight Planner introduces a unique way to look at weather conditions along a route of flight. A new overlay tool provides a visual depiction of the forecast weather along your route at the times you'll be crossing each reporting station. This allows a linear timeline to be displayed instead of having to read through plain text reports of terminal area forecasts. We have also included a simple departure time control that allows you to easily adjust the departure time and instantly see how the forecast weather conditions will change across the entire route. We're excited about this new and unique flight planning tool, and we think you will be too. Let's get started and take a look at this new feature of the AOPA Flight Planner. We'll start with an active route loaded in the Flight Planner. In this case, we're flying from Frederick, Maryland to Oshkosh, Wisconsin. As we can see from the route line color coding, we're going to need a fuel stop along the way, but in order to get an overall idea of the weather we can expect, we'll just look at the entire route as a whole. The new Weather Along Route feature is a chart overlay similar to the Airports and Fuel Along Route overlay. For convenience, we've added buttons to enable and disable both of these overlays on the right side toolbar. The buttons work as a toggle switch and can be used to turn the overlays on and then back off again. In addition, menu items for each overlay tool have been added to the Tools menu as well as the traditional Overlays menu under the Weather group. An important note regarding the new Weather Along Route overlay. Since this tool shows forecast weather conditions based on crossing time, all other overlays that show current weather conditions are turned off when the Weather Along Route overlay is turned on. This is to avoid confusion when looking at weather information for a future time versus current weather conditions. The Flight Planner will remember which overlays were on before you enabled the new tool, and any overlays that were automatically turned off will be turned back on again when you disable the Weather Along Route overlay. So now let's turn on the Weather Along Route overlay and see what the conditions look like for our flight. Similar to the Airports and Fuel Along Route overlay, a shaded corridor is displayed along the planned route and a control panel is opened. The control panel contains slider controls for setting the corridor width as well as adjusting the departure time. The color-coded icons represent the forecast weather conditions for each reporting station that is within the corridor along our route. Note the time label that is below each icon. This is the station crossing time and is calculated based on the departure time you set when you first planned your route. These calculations use the performance values from your aircraft profile as well as the effect of winds aloft on your ground speed. It's a good idea to verify your aircraft performance values in the aircraft profile section for these calculations to be accurate. The icon color is set based on what the TAF conditions are predicted to be when you are crossing each station. As a reminder, green is VFR, blue is marginal VFR, red is IFR, and magenta is low IFR. To see the effect of what departing earlier or later will have on the weather conditions, we can use the slider control in the control panel to quickly adjust the departure time. We instantly see the color-coded icons updating to reflect the new crossing times and the TAF that will be valid for that period. If you find a time that has more favorable weather conditions than what your original departure time was, and you want to update your route with this new time, click the Apply button at the bottom of the control panel. This will set that time as your new departure time. If you don't click the Apply button, your original departure time will be retained. Hovering our mouse pointer over any of the station icons will open a pop-up window that shows a weather condition timeline with our crossing time indicated by the white arrowhead and dashed line. The conditions for each TAF period before and after our crossing time are included for reference in the timeline. In addition to the weather condition timeline, we also see a corresponding hazards timeline. This is an important and unique feature of this new tool that needs a little further explanation. More on that in a little bit. To get more detail about the weather conditions for each station, click on the station icon. This will open a window that contains the two timelines that we saw in the pop-up window, as well as the detailed weather conditions for all of the time periods reported for that station. For convenience, the left column shows the current METAR for that station. Below the current METAR, a checkbox can be enabled that will show the METAR history for the previous 3 hours. The crossing time is shown in the timeline with the same arrowhead and dashed line as we saw in the pop-up window. The forecast period for our crossing time is shaded in a slightly darker blue with a white dashed outline. The corresponding detail block in the right column below the timeline is also shaded with the same color and dashed outline to make it easier to see the corresponding detail conditions that are forecast for our crossing time. The details for the forecast periods before and after our crossing time are also provided. Hovering our mouse over any period in the timeline or details column will highlight the corresponding sections to help link them together. Now let's talk about the hazards information we mentioned earlier. In addition to color-coding the station weather conditions, we have also color-coded weather hazards on the timelines and details. Hazards are any adverse weather conditions that may exist in the forecast period but do not alter the weather condition color coding. As an example, we could have a forecast period reflecting VFR conditions, but where rain and thunderstorms are in the terminal area or in the vicinity. There are 2 colors used to indicate these conditions. Orange for moderate conditions like light to moderate rain, light fog, etc., and red for more considerable conditions like heavy rain, convective activity, any form of frozen precipitation, and others that present dangerous flight conditions. The color coding of the hazard conditions is consistent on the timelines and in the forecast detail sections. The station icons on the chart will also contain a color-coded badge when the hazard exists during the calculated crossing time. Any icon with a hazard badge should be investigated further by clicking on the station icon to open the details window. At the bottom of the forecast details window, we can change between Zulu time and local time. When in local time, the times are all reflected in the time zone that your computer or device is set to. Times are not converted when routes cross into different time zones. So as we can see here, our planned departure time was for 6 a.m. However, the conditions along our route show IFR and marginal VFR conditions with multiple weather hazard warnings. If we're planning on an IFR flight, this may be okay, but should still be investigated to view any hazards or conditions that are below our personal minimums. If we are planning a VFR flight, then we would want to select a different time that may have more favorable VFR conditions along the route. To quickly see how advancing or delaying our departure time would affect the weather conditions, we can simply drag the departure time slider and see if the conditions are forecast to improve. As we adjust the time, we can see that the conditions are forecast to improve to mostly VFR conditions with minimal hazard warnings after 8 o'clock a.m. Clicking on the stations that have a hazard badge reveals the reason for the warning. If these conditions are within our personal minimums, we can click the Apply button to set our new departure time of 8 o'clock. So by simply delaying our departure by 2 hours, we will have much better conditions for our flight. We hope you'll try out this new feature on your next flight and welcome feedback on your experience. You can provide feedback and submit suggestions for improving this and other features by using the User Feedback Forum. Select Submit Feedback from the Feedback menu in the Flight Planner. Thanks for watching and have a great flight.